And here we are on the joyous day of announcements, reveals.
Oh my god, what a day.
It's been a busy one. And here we are for another episode of the Free Roam podcast. How are you, Mr. Joraptor?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I have contact lenses for the first time.
Oh, so you can see.
Yeah, yeah. It really feels as if I'm going to the going to HD for the first time, or that I updated my drivers. I'm like, I'm going around. I'm like, whoa, this is what it feels like.
Oh, so
Yeah. So
did
if
you
you were on the
previously wear
fence, do it.
glasses and stuff?
Sometimes indoors, but not a lot because I was like, I'm not gonna wear them outside for whatever reason. But so then I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna wear them indoors either because then my eyes will get used to them. So yeah, I did not really use them, but then at one point I was meeting up with my parents in the city in Amsterdam, and then I saw just two people standing in the distance, and I was like cycling to them, and I was like, hey. And then I got closer, and those were not my parents. So there were like two guys standing. I'm like, what the heck, dude? Who are you? And then I did see my parents. And then later on, I was like, yeah, we go to that restaurant over there with the lights. I will meet you there. We'll park my bike, and then I'll get there. And then I walked inside the restaurant. I'm like, where are they? And then they were sitting in a different restaurant because when I looked in the distance, the lights were like blurry. So I pointed to the wrong restaurant, and I was like, "Oh my god, come over here to the other restaurant." So yeah, that was like before this, it was already like hard to see. For example, on the at the train station to see which train is this. So I had to walk up to the side and then look up. So that was already it was enough. It had to happen. So today I got like my first sort of test, and I had to like take them in, take them out, and then when I got home, I was like, oh, I want to get them in immediately, and it's been great. Only my eyes feel, they feel way more like tired the whole day. So that's kind of, I think they have to get used to it.
Interesting. Yeah. So I did not wear glasses until relatively recently, and you guys, I've talked about it on stream before, but basically, like, I used to have this resting kind of scowl almost, where I was just kind of my face was always kind of furrowed, my brow was furrowed, and it was because like I really needed glasses, but my brain and eyes were straining to kind of, the way the doctor described it was that my eyes were forcing themselves to focus on things even though naturally they didn't want to. And so it was just like I was working twice as hard to see normally. And so, like, for example, I thought it was normal to just like get a brain splitting migraine after reading for 45 minutes or playing a game for more than an hour or an hour and a half. I thought that was just normal. That's just what happens to people. But no, it's not. It's not normal. And so once I started wearing glasses, it was like a whole new world where like all of a sudden,
I had that today, like walking around, and then I'm still like kind of afraid because when we record this, it's of course like it's late at night, and I don't have to like forget to take them out because that will be an issue. That's kind of my fear, that I wake up one day and then, oh my god, I forgot to take them out, and then I think your eyes will hurt for the next probably the whole day. So yeah, but it was pretty easy to. That was kind of my fear as well, to put them in. It's kind of scary at first because you get very close to your eye, obviously, and to get them out was all easier than I thought. And I'm taking day contact lenses, so I can just throw them away afterwards, which is nice.
Oh, that is nice. I didn't even know. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've only ever done the glasses thing. For me, it's like a daily thing. If I don't wear glasses at all during the day, I'm fine. I can see fine at distance. It's when I'm up close dealing with like static stuff, like a computer monitor or something sitting a few feet away. That's when I can get in trouble and when I get the bad headaches. But if I'm out and about or driving and stuff, I don't really use glasses at all. So it's interesting. Like if I use glasses for half the day and then I take my glasses out off after streaming, I have the worst headache by dinner time.
Oh, damn.
But
Yeah.
if I leave them on, I'm fine. Or if I don't use glasses at all day, I'm fine. It's just I have to dedicate to one for the whole day. It's weird. Mia says, I had the same thing, Luke. Then I started working full time at a game studio and I was like, holy shit, this headache is terrible. Yeah, it's crazy. You don't realize just like staring at a fixed distance is that damaging. But the other thing that helped me was the curved screens. The curved screens actually did help me.
Nice.
Because your eyes don't have to adjust their focal length as you look across the screen, because it's always the same distance from your eyes as you pan across, whereas a flat display, looking at the edges, your eyes focus farther away than the center, which is closest. So curved screens have helped me a little bit, but yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. If you ever have headaches, I recommend go to the eye doctor. It can't hurt, and it could change your life in a good way.
Yeah, that was for me the thing as well. Like I just thought it's fine, but then these things started piling up. Also, when sometimes I would like wait outside, and then friends would pick me up with a car, and then when I was like at a public station or whatever, there would be many cars driving past them, and I did not know what kind of car they had. So I would just walk up to random cars, look inside, and be like, those are not my friends." So yeah, that's
sorry. I swear
that's
I'm not a creep.
In the past now, I hope.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that they're helping. Yeah, this past week has been kind of an interesting one in the gaming world, especially today. A lot happened today that all just kind of slapped all at once. So we're going to go through all of that with you guys here joining us live. We're going to tackle all of this stuff. Kind of the titular topic. The big one, of course, is the announcement or gameplay reveal, rather, of Shadow of the Erdtree, which, of course, is the DLC for Elden Ring. And this is also a trailer in which we got to see a release date announced. They actually dropped a release date, which was kind of cool. There were rumors going on for a while that they might Shadow of the Erdtree drop this in February.
I think it was the plan.
But
it was probably the plan at one point, I think, and yeah, that shifted. But I actually I think we discussed it on the podcast as well. Like, I looked at the Bandai Namco like investor or relation like sort of call and documents they had up, and there was no like big bump for this quarter, so it never made sense for them to do it. But they still added like a ton of stuff to the database from Steam, which is still kind of weird, knowing what we know now. So yeah, I guess they were just like testing it behind the scenes, but nothing, for us yet. And I think June is, I mean, the year is finally starting to take shape a bit more, which is nice, right? First we were like, okay, Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin, March 22nd, same day. Then we heard about Stellar Blade a month later, Hellblade, of course, in May. And now we have this in June. So it's nice because we also had like 2022 where it was all front loaded with Elden Ring, Horizon, and then at the end of the year we had some stuff, but in between nothing. So now it's kind of nice. And I mean, I totally think if there were things planned for June, they're gonna be delayed. They're gonna be pushed. I even saw like before the Elden Ring DLC was announced, like a indie sort of Souls-like, we're launching on June 21st, and I was like, I think they're gonna change that.
Yeah, I think you should figure that out. It's especially, I think it's compounded because this is apparently not a small expansion. This is the biggest one they've ever done. Which you would kind of expect.
$40.
It's $40 freaking dollars. It has a collector's edition. I can't think of another time off the top of my head that an expansion had a collector's edition. But
no,
it's a big deal. Shows how much they're putting on this thing, and a lot of people are super hyped for it. I would fully expect this is maybe 20, maybe 30 hours of gameplay.
Probably more.
I think
I would say.
They said that there's over 10 bosses, which probably means 11. They've said that there are, of course, dungeons. There's 8 new weapon archetypes, or I think they called it styles of weapons. The verbiage was kind of weird, but at the very least, there's going to be a lot of new weapons, new dungeons, big areas to explore and run around, some new enemy types, and of course bosses. And so everything looks pretty solid. I'm intrigued. They said that difficulty is akin to later stage bosses in Elden Ring, with multiple bosses that are on the difficulty level of Millennia. So a lot of people are very excited and also terrified of that. And all told, I mean, it just seems like they've been working hard, and this will probably be a dominating force in June. And because it's such a big expansion, and it's not just like a little 5-hour thing like they did with I forget the name of it, but the first expansion they did for Dark Souls 3 that was much smaller.
Dark Souls 3.
It was like the winter snowy one, but whatever that one was called, that was a much smaller one. If this were on that scale, I don't think people would be that worried about June, and they'd still release it. But because this is basically going to be the size of a video game, a full game, they're just going to clear it out, let Elden Ring kind of dominate it. Plus, coming in like mid to late June, there's also going to be a lot of discussion around that time, because that's when all of the summer showcases are happening usually. So I think it's a good spot for it to sit. As for everything else, I mean, I think it looks cool, looks badass, and I'm just excited to see what they've spent all this time working on, because they've spent a good amount of time on this, and so I'm very hopeful that it's going to blow our socks off.
Yeah, and it's exciting that it's like an open world DLC, which is of course kind of new for them. So yeah, it will be like a whole new map we get to explore. And yeah, really it was like the bingo card for the expansion. You could like just run that through, and you would have like new bosses, new gear, new weapons, all that sort of stuff, new skills. We saw some interesting things like a martial arts sort of playstyle or whatever that looked kind of cool. Cool to of course see the difference between the roaming bosses and the ones in the more arena type encounters. So yeah, it's looking great. It's crazy that it's also coming to PS4 and Xbox One. Like, you sometimes forget that game is still
cross-gen.
And you saw it sometimes in the trailers, especially like the close-ups at certain characters, not really the bosses, but like the player character. And I was like, oh, but of course the art style makes up for it. And yeah, I think it's going to be great. And I also thought this was interesting from the IGN interview. So they had like an interview up about the DLC with Miyazaki. So they asked about, is this the end of the Elden Ring story, or is there room for either more DLC or in Elden Ring 2 down the line? We don't want to say this is the end of the Elden Ring saga for now. I think we said a similar thing at the end of Dark Souls 3. We didn't want to flatten those possibilities or put a pin in them just at the time. And it's a similar story with Elden Ring. We don't want to discourage the possibilities of that. There might be more ideas in the future, but, and it's kind of interesting, we don't have any current plans to make a second DLC or a sequel. But we definitely don't want to snuff out that possibility. We think that there could well be something, or we think that there could well be something the future. I think that's, of course, translation. But yeah, you said there could totally be something in the future. But them not having current plans means that it's not going to happen anytime soon, which is kind of interesting, because we heard about like some cross-media things they want to do, like a mobile game with Tencent. So there's a lot happening. I think a lot of people, publishers and developers that are not from are like very keen to do more, because this game set the world on fire when it came out for a new IP. So obviously they want to do more with it, but it seems that From is moving on to something else. Did you hear about that rumor about them doing like a new, more sorcery focused game?
I don't think so, actually.
Let me look that up.
Yeah, go ahead.
But
pull that up.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, one of the other interesting things that happened in this past week was the revelation that people did some digging, and they found some files through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office that they had come across that ownership of the trademark of Elden Ring had been transferred from Bandai Namco to From Software in March of 2023, about 13 months after the game came out. And the document just really simply states that the name of the franchise has been transferred in terms of rights to From Software, which is interesting. An update was posted clarifying the trademark covers the game's name exclusively. The transfer of the IP, like Elden Ring, which is copyright protected, would be done by contract and not necessarily require public registration. But the fact that they're transferring rights to the name's trademark was a very interesting development that hasn't really happened before. For example, like Sony never transferred Bloodborne's trademark to From Software or anything. They still hold all of that. So people thought that was a really interesting development. Maybe From Software was trying to separate from Bandai Namco and they're going to do their own thing. There's been discussions. They've mentioned a lot that they were taking investments specifically to try and self-publish stuff. So, for example, in August of 2022, From Software owner Kadokawa Corporation announced plans to sell shares to Sony and Tencent, which would result in the pair owning combined roughly 30% of From Software. And they said, quote, through the implementation of the fund procurement, From Software will aim to proactively invest in development of more powerful game IP for itself to strengthen From Software's development capabilities, blah, 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 and will seek to establish a framework that allows for the expansion of the scope of its own publishing in the significantly growing global market. In other words, they want to shake free of Bandai Namco and publish their own games, which they obviously are big enough to do if they wanted
Yeah,
to.
100%.
So that could be part of it.
It's not because of Bandai. Like they really, I think they are already publishing it in Japan themselves. I think Bandai even only published it internationally, so they're just like giving it to them. But it was of course a huge boon for Bandai, so they must not be happy with this. But I don't think they have any leg to stand on.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, From
so-
Software at this point, if they want to just go and make a new IP and they called it Belden Ting and it's just like a different IP, but it's their own thing and it's not associated with Bandai Namco, that will sell just as well, I think. Like,
yeah, because that was also what happened with Elden Ring, right? It was the combination of like people hearing about From Software games for the longest time and them, making them more like in the modern day trend as well by going fully open world. It was kind of their, I kind of hate it, but people do use it and I do get it, like the Breath of the Wild moment where it was like, whoa, they're trying to reinvent what they have done for a long time.
And they also made it a lot more accessible. And I know accessibility for some people is like a dirty word, but summons and different mechanics like that really did open it up. So players who previously would have been kind of difficulty gated out of these types of games, they found the game much more manageable with those summons. And I think also the fact that there were a lot of weapons that were totally broken, intentionally or not, also kind of helped. Because if you wanted to kind of find a way to cheese the game and kind of have an ultimate power up, you could get that with like the Sword of Night and Flame or
they didn't nerf that though, but
yeah, they did end up nerfing it like a few weeks after launch, but still, like, there were ways for new players to get in and not be totally miserable, which I think helped it too. But either way, it seems like From Software, they're not the guys who are just going to keep milking the same franchise over and over and over again. If they want to try something different, they can try something different. Did you find that article on the different type of game they're looking at doing, the rumored one?
Yeah. So it's called Spellbound, but I'm kind of like iffy on how reliable it is. There has been like multiple leaks about it, so it should be like a From Software game that is more focused on magic-based combat, and also be a little more like the games before Elden Ring. But it's mostly from like not really reliable sources. It's just that the name has come up multiple times, and I do think Elden Ring, before it was revealed, was also being discussed and leaked in a similar sort of fashion. But maybe like we could see that name, but I think overall, because that's also from at the end of the IGN interview, they were asked about the current like state of the industry, and while Miyazaki didn't want to really talk about things outside of his company, he did note that they're like very blessed, that they have like really grown. Of course, again, Elden Ring was, I think, one of the, if not the best selling game of 2022. And what I foresee in this climate, at least for us, is From Software is a From Software where the games can be directed by others, not only myself. And that's what we of course also saw with Armored Core. So yeah, they can have multiple games going on at the same time, because it's still kind of crazy that we get this DLC in June, and of course Core, another like very well-regarded game, August last year, and then Elden Ring the year before. So maybe we see something new from Software every year. That would of course be pretty wild. So yeah, they are in a great position, and they just want to continue to release these games for as long as we can. So yeah, they will keep going as makes sense. And I mean, Sony also has like a part in like the company that owns From Software, right? And Tencent, I think, as well.
Yeah, it was
I think,
Sony and Tencent bought a share of the parent company, which equates to roughly 30% of From Software. So, people
yeah,
saying, oh, well, Xbox should just come in and buy them. They'd have to be buying out Sony and Tencent's shares, and that assumes they want to sell, which
I don't think
they
it.
do.
They probably got a ton of like. They probably got a ton of offers already. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're good. Like, why sell your most valuable asset when it keeps going up in value? It's just climbing and climbing. So, yeah, it's From Software is in a really interesting spot. I do think Miyazaki is describing something that a lot of developers and sort of personality-driven creative franchises have dealt with. Like Todd Howard has talked a lot about trying to find ways for BGS to function without him directly involved in day-to-day operations because he's just too busy. And I think that it's something that's very real that has to be considered. Like, if your company hinges on one person, if that person ever wants to take a vacation, ever wants to retire, if something happens, God forbid, to their health,
Wants
or
to make
whatever,
an Indiana Jones game.
yeah, or a crappy space game, then you're screwed. Like, there's just nothing else you can do. You're just limited. I think the only exception is like Hideo Kojima, because he just loves the attention. So I admire his kind of drive to try and train up other directors to be able to work on stuff at the same time he's working on something else. I do think that if he's in that sort of producer role, that could work, but it's easier said than done to direct a studio creating Game of the Year every time they release something. As we saw with like Armored Core, I think there were some choices with Armored Core that made it difficult to palate for some Western audiences, which is going to harm its chances at getting a lot of success at like the Game Awards and stuff like that. Maybe that was totally intentional. They were like, no, we're not trying to make this game super popular or super well awarded, but it generally reviewed really well. I just think Hidetaka Miyazaki is talented at creating games that appeal to not just the Eastern audience, but also the Western audience, melding the two together and making it approachable to a new audience and a new generation of gamers. And that's something that, I mean, the reason that From Software is so exceptional is because they're able to do that, and no other studio has been able to do it on that steady of a pace.
Yeah, I think like in Japan, most people, especially at the start of like, or like the previous generation, were kind of like the Western gaming companies were kind of like overtaking them, where it was kind of hard to. I think Capcom did really well with the Resident Evil remakes, but they were struggling for some time as well. They of course found success with Monster Hunter, but I see Square Enix, for example, still in this sort of weird situation where they just have a hard time making sure that new people enjoy their games. And I think the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, did you try the demo by any chance? I think that's like a perfect example of them. Like, what that demo, I think once again alienates more people, or like hurts the game more than that it actually achieved, because it was once again really cool for if you already liked Final Fantasy VII, but kind of hard if you are not interested in it, because they had a lot of like inside jokes and a lot of like cool moments that you only really know if you played those games before. And I think that's why From Software is so successful. They can appeal to a ton of people. It works super well. Like, it's mostly a single player game, and those kind of tend to have a hard time reaching the Twitch audiences, for example, as well. But this game has reached insane heights while being mostly a single player open world game that usually kind of dies down pretty quickly in the Twitch and content creator space. But
Yeah.
not for them. They've been doing insanely well, and they can get away with not having difficulties. Not a lot of companies can do that.
Yeah. No, they're just like, this is what the game is balanced as, and
Yeah.
figure it out. I mean, there's a reason that they're so highly regarded. I think absolutely. It's not just hype. Like, I think there's an argument to be made, and some people have made the argument pretty convincingly that a game like Death Stranding from any other developer, if you just copy and pasted it to another studio, would have been shredded and would not have been reviewed anywhere near as positively. But the fact that Kojima's name on it is what really helps kind of ease over some of that stuff. Whereas like From Software, I think From Software, any of their games dropping from any developer would be received on this scale. Maybe they wouldn't have gotten the initial hype boost, but I think Elden Ring coming from Square Enix or Ubisoft or whoever, I think everybody would be like, yeah, well, the game kind of speaks for itself. It's just crazy, crazy good. But
look, where's Bloodborne?
Where
the
is
remake?
That is a great question. Where is Bloodborne? I mean, obviously, the second Hidetaka Miyazaki does any press, people are going to start asking him about Bloodborne.
Yeah.
It's just a meme at this point. And so people did. And this particular article I pulled up from Stream earlier was specifically from Video Game Chronicle, and they're describing an interview that he did. So fans have long been calling for the studio to revisit its critically acclaimed and influential action RPG, which was Bloodborne on the PS4 in 2015. Miyazaki, who's also directed Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, and most recently Elden Ring, was asked about a potential Bloodborne remake in an interview with Eurogamer with regard to this trailer and everything. And he said, quote, "It is a title we hold very dear, and just as much as our fans, it does make me very happy to see that there are still so many people passionate about it. Yeah. Put simply, it makes me very happy to see it's a title with a lot of specific memories, both for me and the staff who worked on it. And when we see those passionate voices in the community, of course, it makes us feel thrilled. It makes us feel very fortunate to have that and to have those memories." And people are taking that as possible confirmation of a remake or a sequel. He's framing it as like lovely memories, like when you're describing an old relationship or a car you used to drive. I don't see this as confirmation or discussion that he's actually going to be remaking it or anything.
Also, what I found interesting is that at the Eurogamer article, he also talks about, I think, having a new hardware is definitely part of what gives these remakes value. Things you weren't able to achieve on previous generations of hardware, ways you weren't able to render specific expressions. New hardware sometimes makes it possible. And this comes after the rumor from a Persona leaker that has been right many times, who said that the Bloodborne remake for PS6 is in the planning stages. At one point had the job. That was also rumored by Colin Moriarty. But it might be with another studio. Bloodborne PC Point was made at some point, but Sony sat on it for multiple reasons. Like, I totally believe that there were plans for this, but maybe they saw the Demon's Souls remake worked really well as like a launch game and would not really work that well if you put it out later. What if we do Bloodborne as like a PS6? Because I think at this point, if you waited this long, you can better go for the remake. You can better, I think, do the part 1 Last of Us sort of approach, right? Because I think a remaster would not be as exciting. If you wait like another 4 or 5 years, then you can get away with a remake, because it's already 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
It's 9 going on
2014, 2015 is when it came out, right?
Yep.
So yeah, it's like, so I think they can get away with a remake, but yeah, having it at like a PS6 thing would of course be a system seller. Okay, I think kind of right now they kind of know what the PlayStation 5 will be. And I'm not sure if a Bloodborne remake is what they need. But of course, Microsoft will get very aggressive next generation. So Bloodborne can help them.
Yeah, I do think that if they announced the PlayStation 6 and then they were like, yeah, and on day one, we're bringing The Last of Us Part 3 and we have Bloodborne
Spider-Man
Remake,
3.
Spider-Man 3, all the threes. If they come out swinging with that, I do think that would be. I don't think they'd really struggle to sell day one units, but I do think that would be very interesting to a lot of people. I think that could do it. That could pop it off.
They have to do something against Elder Scrolls 6. So.
Do you really think Elder Scrolls 6 does that well? Do you really think so?
Oh yeah, no, it will set the world on fire. But if the game is any good, that's the second thing.
Because like I did that.
I think
survey.
it will be massive.
Like I did that survey and I asked people right next to the launch of Starfield, and then like 3 months after Starfield, and I asked initially in both cases I asked, after playing Starfield, are you more or less excited for Elder Scrolls 6? And,
but those people will all still buy it.
Well, initially like 30, well, it's Game Pass. So, I mean, I guess they'll try it. But it was like 30 something percent said they were more excited. After 3 months, that number had dropped to only 6% were more excited. And a lot of them were less excited. Like 40, 50% of them were less excited, which is bad. That's real bad.
I mean, Cyberpunk's launch was really bad as well. And do you really think that that's gonna hurt Witcher? Like, well, obviously they turned it around, but I do think that sort of. I even think that people just kind of forget, and I do think that when that's kind of Skyrim is like another thing. It's like Elder Scrolls. I do think that people kind of separate that from Starfield, even though it will be the same team making it. But I do think if they ruin Starfield or Elder Scrolls 6, that'll be a bigger issue. I'm sure people are going to be cautious, more so than if Starfield was a big success. But I still think it's going to be, when it comes out, the biggest game of that year.
I don't know, man. I think if they could turn around Starfield, maybe, people forgive them. But I've seen like the Starfield Bethesda community get so jaded in the last few months as like progress and updates have been really slow to come. Maybe they do turn it around, but it's going to take a lot. And if they pull a Cyberpunk 2077 turnaround, then you know what? I think they'll be primed, and I'll be just as excited for what they do next at that point. But they have a ways to go before I think they're at that point, because right now everybody's looking at it and they're like, I swear to God, if Elder Scrolls 6 runs on the Creation Engine, I'm going to scream. Like, people are just going to lose it. I think the first trailer that drops showing the game itself, if it's got those weird Starfield sullen, sunken, soulless eyes, totally I think people are going to be immediately memeing it into oblivion. That's sort of a pun.
Oblivion.
But
nice.
Memeing it into Skyrim. So anyway, all that to say, I think it makes sense for them to do a Bloodborne remake. I think it's made sense for a long time that they do it. The fact they haven't makes me wonder if it's like, contractual stuff.
They're even remastering Until Dawn, like
from the same year. Yeah.
No, they're even looking at like. You can't make it up. So they, just like Nintendo with the Wii U generation, they're looking at every game they put out. They want to remaster or remake it. So it's weird that Bloodborne, wasn't there yet. But again, I totally think, they don't need it for this generation anymore. I think that they're fine. So maybe they're just holding it back.
Yeah, which could be the ultimate explanation. It could just simply be, it could be as simple as just. It wouldn't it would sell well, it'd pop off, but we could also use it to sell consoles and dominate the discourse.
Yeah.
In 2 years.
And then do a proper remake.
2-3 years.
And that really benefits from the PS6. So it's an even bigger jump. So it's not just like a 60 FPS with prettier graphics.
Yeah, to be full native 4K 60 FPS, like with all those new
maybe add some new content or something. I don't know.
Rework the Chalice dungeons so people actually play them. Like, oh, it could be so good. Yeah, Gothic, that's what we're describing right now. He mentioned that he liked Bloodborne and liked that people liked having memories of Bloodborne, and he had nice memories. It is not a confirmation of a remake at all. Anybody saying that is lying. Like, it's outrageous. So, yeah, From Software, busy day today. Busy day for From Software. Lots going on.
Yes.
As for other stuff going on, there was also a Nintendo showcase or Treehouse Live snap whatever thing they call it nowadays. And in that, we got a couple of announcements that were interesting. The one that jumped out to me just immediately was they're bringing a classical kind of re-release of the Battlefront games. The original Battlefront games are bringing that to the Switch, and then it'll also come to PS5 and I believe PC as well. I'm not sure about Xbox.
Yeah, March already.
Yeah,
I think Xbox probably as well.
I would imagine so. So those are coming. That's gonna be great. I'm excited for that. That looked cool. We got another trailer for the South Park game that looks fine. The trailer wasn't very good, but the big kind of news of the day, though, I think, was the confirmation of what we already kind of knew, which was just that Grounded, Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, and Sea of Thieves are in fact going multi-platform. These are the games that were referenced at the Xbox event. They said 4 games are coming. They, for whatever reason, didn't say which 4 games, but I believe it was The Verge confirmed pretty much immediately it was these. And sure enough,
so weird. Did they have like a deal with Nintendo or something? Is that maybe it that Nintendo didn't want?
It must have been.
Yeah.
They were like, we agreed to have this announced at your Treehouse Live event.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't say the name.
Yeah, our partner direct is the right. Yeah.
So I think that's probably why. But yeah, I mean, Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, I think are great fits for the Switch. I think that's a dream come true. Grounded, and of course Sea of Thieves benefit. Oh yeah.
I think Hi-Fi Rush is not on Switch.
Oh, is Hi-Fi Rush?
Only Pentiment and Grounded are on Switch. Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves are on the PlayStation.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, I stand corrected. Pentiment, though, is a great fit, I do think, for the Switch.
But is it not like, I don't know if people that have just played a session of Mario Party want to go to Pentiment, but we will see.
It's a very different kind of game.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it fits that audience. Like, I think Hi-Fi Rush would have been way better, but they probably could not get it to run or something. Maybe they will do that for the Switch too. I think maybe that would be like a smart.
Maybe. I think you're right. Pentiment is very, very niche, but I do think that there's an older demographic of people that might be interested in it that have just never.
It's a perfect handheld game.
Yeah, it's a great pickup, play for an hour, set it down.
Adventure, like visual novel type experience. So. And it's already coming February 22nd. Like that's pretty fast.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Wait.
Yep.
So that makes me wonder because they, of course, it seemed like they kind of struggled to get that developer update out, right? Because there were rumors about all these Xbox games coming to other platforms, and then, as we discussed in previous episodes, people were thinking of the most crazy things that would happen, like Xbox going full third party, ditching the hardware, whatever. Of course, that all is not true, but it seemed that they wanted to do like a developer update like this at the end of the month or something like that. Now they it seemed like put out the tweet, we're going to do a podcast next week. So then they did the podcast, but this game is already coming out right now. So they either moved it forward or, which also would be crazy.
I think all the schedules got thrown up because of all of that crap that went down. Because you're right, it was basically just every journalist out there was like, I've heard that this game was at one point considered. So like they probably were in a conference room. Somebody said, what if we brought Halo? And everybody laughs and then they move on. They're like, they technically considered it. So like the whole thing was just stupid and kind of a nothing burger as a story. But these games I think make sense to bring. Hi-Fi Rush, the more people that play that, the better. And like you mentioned last week, I think coming from a Japanese developer, it makes sense to bring it to a console that is very, very popular in Japan in the form of the PlayStation. That just makes sense and lines up. Sea of Thieves, the more players, the merrier. Same with Grounded, the more players, the merrier. That's kind of the goal for that. And Pentiment, it's just a really freaking good game that not a lot of people have played, and the more people that play it, I'm happier because it's awesome.
Can you do an elevator pitch on Pentiment?
Pentiment is like an elevator pitch is usually like a sentence. So how do I phrase it in a sentence?
I mean, we have like a 30-second elevator.
Oh, it's okay. So it's a bigger elevator. I mean, I would say it is a visual novel that not only is artistically very, very unique, but has a pretty interesting narrative as well, and focuses on a time and place in history that's usually kind of brushed over in a lot of games. Because if you're going to do like a medieval type of game, you're usually just like a knight fighting in like armor with your sword clanging and everything. You don't really focus on some of the calmer scenes and calmer like set pieces and characters that might not be living the most exciting lives and things. And so it's just a really interesting game that I think I forget the name of the game's director, so you have to forgive me, I don't remember it, but he was saying how this was a game that would never have seen the light of day.
I have to get out here, but
sorry, I got distracted. No, he was just saying this is a type of game that never would have existed without like a big corporate overlord that was able to just bankroll it. It would have been canceled before it ever saw the light of day. But it just is a freak of nature as a video game that it even exists. So it's a very long elevator ride. I'm sorry.
No, long building, tall building. So Hi-Fi Rush is coming March 19th, Grounded April 16th, and the Sea of Thieves April 30th. So all in the next few months, which is kind of crazy.
I think it's all the same quarter. Nah, well, it depends.
No. Yeah.
Because it usually breaks in March, so I guess that
yeah. And Ubisoft has still April 30th to hook their people with Skull and Bones. Real quick, you made a video on it as well. You did not really play a lot of it, like the full version, right? During last week's episode.
Yeah, so of course Skull and Bones finally actually dropped. I've played a lot of the game over the last like year at a lot of preview events and things, and the final version ended up just being the preview event version, but with a more filled in, like I think performance was a little better and more stable, so I was happy to see that. But with all this said, like, it's just a game, like you mentioned last week, that has a lot of really bizarre choices. There's a lot of things in it that are just weird, that are remnants of like 2014 game design. And then you see remnants of 2017 game design. And it's just because it's been in development hell for so long that the final version we got is just kind of a mess of a bunch of different games, none of which work super well together. And at its core, the worst thing it could possibly be is exactly what it is. And that is just simply unfun. And I just have tried to play it. I've tried to, even with the end game, play it in the best possible scenario, and it's just not it.
I think you also said that you had like a lot of time during that session, and at one point you were like, I just want to quit playing. Can I stop?
Yeah, like straight up, for our end game session we did however many weeks ago, they gave us like 5 hours, which you think about it, okay, 5 hours, that's a decent chunk of time.
I mean, for Assassin's Creed Red, I would take those 5 hours and be like, yes, please.
Yeah, gobbling it up. But for this, we got 3 hours in. We had done each of the end game kind of class missions or end game different categories of missions, and then the person that was kind of running our playtest with us goes, okay guys, so what do you want to go back and do again? And the call was so quiet, dude. It was painful because it was like nobody wanted to do the freaking like take over the town, whatever they call it. I can't remember the name of it. Whatever those missions are. Nobody wanted to go and storm the villages and towns and take them over because it's just fighting waves of ships and then shooting down towers, but you don't get to do anything cool. And you just do it over and over again. And we kept having objectives break, so it was just boring. And then like a bunch of the missions where like you take the contraband and you just run and try to deliver it somewhere. If you didn't have the right archetype of ship, you can never catch up. And if they had the right type of archetype of ship, you can never catch up. So like there's no point to do the mission at all. It's just stupidly broken from the very start. And like, so there really was not much. The thing we had the most fun with was hunting and killing the sea monster. and then the end of season 1 boss, Le Peste. And those were the most interesting just because they were different and somewhat challenging. But Le
Yeah.
Peste, you have to have a very specific loadout of furniture, which are basically perks for your ship. And if you don't have that, you just can't beat him. And those are gained through a lot of grinding, or they suggested that there was a potential for kind of expediting that monetarily, but it wasn't clear at the time. And then as for the sea monster fights, interesting, but again, like, it's a 15-minute fight, 10-15-minute fight that once it's over, you get some stakes and some materials you can use for crafting some random things. And then you're on your way until it spawns again. And so it's just like, there's just not enough there, I think, to really keep it engaging.
Yeah.
And yeah,
This game just came out in the wrong order. Like it's just like for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you had like cool and Black Flag, of course, as well. But Odyssey more recently, you had like cool rewards for your ship, but that was always just a cool extra. You would use your ship, of course, to also take out some other ships that were kind of protecting higher level islands. And it was nice to get like a new sail, a new figurehead. And that was because there was so much more. And it just feels weird to go back to only having that, to only having this small part of other games that Ubisoft made themselves before for the same price that had so much more.
yeah.
So it's
Well, and it's
wild.
people who like the game, and I want to be clear, like, there are
Yeah,
people that are
no,
going to
I'm
have fun
happy.
with it, and I'm glad you're having fun with it. But like, the people that are having fun with it will say it's unfair and unreasonable to say you don't like Skull and Bones, or you're not having that much fun with Skull and Bones because Black Flag or Rogue or whatever other game you want to point to that Ubisoft has published and released, like you said, for the same price, effectively full price. In the past, that game had more content than Skull and Bones, therefore it's bad. Like, that's not fair, because that's not what this game was trying to be. And I think it's just, it reminds me of Suicide Squad again, because people were saying it's unfair to dismiss Suicide Squad because it doesn't do what Rocksteady has done before. And I agree, like, you shouldn't dismiss it, but it's impossible not to consider it. Like, it's impossible to play Suicide Squad and not remember what this studio is capable of. It's impossible to play Skull and Bones, rather, without considering Black Flag and Rogue and all of the other games that they've provided, which had all of this ship stuff and compelling hand-to-hand combat and big stories and huge environments to explore and all sorts of other broader things going on. You can't really separate it. It's just part of the context of the game. And I think part of the issue for Skull and Bones specifically is that this is a game that's been in the public consciousness for a while. It was rumored years and years and years ago, and then it was announced back in like 2017, I think. And finally, by the time like we got it, it's not the same game that we were initially looking forward to. Like, initially it was basically pitched as like Black Flag, but without the Assassin's Creed coat of paint. And it's like, okay, that could be cool. Just a lean, mean pirate game. Cool. But what we got was like a weird character shooter, but the characters are ships. So you have a healer ship and a tank ship and a scout ship. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know?
Yeah, it's I'm happy that it's behind us. Like, I want to say one, like, I think a positive thing, they are already starting season 1 next week. So that's pretty wild. Like, they I mean, if that is like a sort of cadence we can expect for other Ubisoft games that are more of a live service, I think that's like a good news. But it might also be because they, of course, delayed this game many years and had like a couple of different release dates. So they probably had this content finished for a while already. But if, for example, because my prediction is Assassin's Creed Red will also have seasons, probably. And if that already starts also in December or something, if the game comes out in November, I think that would be exciting. But yeah, so that's, I think, a good thing. If you like the game, there's a lot to look forward to. For me, though, I just can't get excited for the prospect of only getting a better ship. That just feels like, why am I what am I chasing if I can't even walk around on that ship? If I know that if they ever add a new island for a treasure, I will just be running around. Like it's, I don't know, but great that we can look past this
Yeah.
and look at the
It's
future.
I agree, like the long term engagement is the big question with live service games. I think at the core, Helldivers has shown us it's just frankly about fun. If the game is fun, people will play it, and if they get new weapons, if they get new abilities, awesome. But if the game is just fun, everything else kind of just drops away. Like if you have a really good core game like a Valorant or a CS:GO or Overwatch, people are going to be upset I mentioned Overwatch, but like if you have just a good core game, you have an established community that's going to keep playing it because the game is just simply fun. The problem is that it seems like some of these games like a Suicide Squad or a Skull and Bones are built around trying to manipulate the player into engaging with it for long periods of time instead of just making a fun game. And it leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and everybody's like, well, this just
it's
sucks.
like on the whiteboard it looked like a lot of content that will engage the player for a long time, and that was also what you see with when the game opens up. You have like the sort of job boards or the bounty boards where you have these missions that are dailies. They're just there so that you every day can grind a little more, while what you do is basically still the same. You sail for a few minutes to a location, destroy a ship, gather resources or whatever, then return. So yeah, I agree. I hope Helldivers opens the eyes of many people, and I still think the sort of community aspect in that game is super interesting, where I just love how it can really fall flat if you try humor in I think when they first showed the trailers, I was like, not sure if this is gonna hit, but now you see comments everywhere. Don't buy Skull and Bones, but help us defend Super Earth, like all that sort of stuff. Everyone is like kind of for democracy and really really role playing as these Helldivers.
Yeah, people
So
have come into chat. People have come into chat today during the stream and be like, Luke, why are you streaming? Democracy needs you.
yeah. And that's just awesome. And that the systems like that really work, because even though it is like, it's like a endless sort of system, or you can of course still win, but there will be more. There will be endless of enemies. There will always be enemies to fight in that game. It's a cool sort of thing that this community effort. I think more games should probably do it, especially if you don't have PvP, because then at one point you run into issues with not having enough content. So, but speaking of Sony, because it's still kind of crazy to remember that Helldivers is like a Sony game. They're making bank. I think at one point we will get a blog post in the next few months that they bought Arrowhead and that Helldivers like sold 10 million or something like that. Something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time, because it's just too clear a grab for them at this point. They're going to be hiring a ton of people to expedite the production of
it's gonna get a movie.
It's gonna get 6 seasons in a movie. Yeah, there's lots happening.
Get your Helldivers figurines, and of course another Sony thing is the Spider-Man. I wanted to quickly go over this. It's not a lot of news, so we know about the Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus update that is dropping on March 7th. But what they're also doing, and I think I kind of want your take on this, Luke, because I'm not sure if you saw this, but they're going to add new suits to the game. 2 of them will be for free, and 2 others will be paid, but there is a wrinkle to it. So what they're basically doing is they're partnering with Gameheads, which is a charity that is working on empowering low-income youth and youth of color to thrive in the video gaming industry. So a really great cause. And what they basically are doing is they're on March 7th, when the New Game Plus update hits, they're gonna sell an outfit bundle. So 1 outfit for Peter and 1 for Miles for $5. There are some like photo mode stickers and other more useless stuff in there as well. And if you buy that, 100% of the purchase price, they're calling Fly and Fresh suit pack. So 100% of the purchase price, $5, it goes to Gameheads, to that charity. But, and there are some wrinkles to this, it's only up to $1 million that they get from this. So 5, I did not do the calculation, but trying to figure out how many they have to sell then. Let me do real quick. So 200, if they sell 200,000, they will hit the max. So then they will give 1 million to game heads, but it's only the money that they make on the suit pack in the US. So if you buy it in Europe, you're just giving money to Sony, and in other parts of the world.
Well, you might
but
think that you're giving it to a charity.
Yeah, because I saw, for example, PlayStation UK tweet out as well, support game heads. And I'm like, but wait, if you buy this in the UK, nothing goes to the charity. So they're really not really upfront about
that
it.
Smells
what they do,
stinky.
It's kind of is, but I'm on the other hand, I'm kind of like, I think it's a cool thing to do to like support a charity. Like, I mean, a lot of other companies would just release, like Ubisoft would just release an item pack and be like, everything goes to us. But still, the sort of wrinkle that it's only up to 1 million. So we know that the game sold more than 10 million. 200,000 buying this pack, I think it's possible. And that's only in the US.
I don't know. Well,
there's one other wrinkle before
Yeah.
They will also make the suits available for free at a later date. So they already said that will happen. So you're basically buying early access for these suits. But again, they're kind of promoting this as the sort of charity thing, but only if you buy it in the US, all the funds go to that charity. Oh, and also from March 7th through April 5th. So after that, it also seems that all the money goes to Sony.
And perhaps the biggest wrinkle with all of this is that the suits are some of the ugliest damn things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. What on earth are these?
It's like Fortnite. I don't know, man. It's like but
it's like a kindergartner ate a bottle of glue and glitter and then puked on a suit. That's what this looks like. I mean, on the one hand, I'm like, yay, more money for charity. That's great. I love it. On the other hand, it feels like if you're going to pitch it as, yeah, buy this and you'll support charity. It's great. But then you read the fine print and it's like, yeah, if you buy it outside of this time frame, if too many people have bought it, if you buy it in the wrong location, we just pocket the money directly. That feels That's weird.
Like, as if they cannot send that money to that charity as well, right?
Well, and they could straight up just be like, maybe they were saying it's because of legal reasons they have to do that. They could just get around that by saying it's a matching thing, or for every one of these units we sell, we're going to donate $4.99 to the charity. Just say it like that instead of your purchase goes directly to the charity. It feels like kind of a slimy way of getting people to buy a cosmetic set thinking they're helping something.
Yeah.
When they're actually just trying to trick you to buy.
I put up in the doc, I put the PlayStation UK tweet, and then you see what I kind of mean. It's totally not clear. It's like, plus radical new Flash and Fly Spider-Man PS5 suits come from a unique collaboration with GameHeads. Learn more about how purchasing the Fresh and Fly suits supports a good cause at the PlayStation blog. But your PlayStation UK, no one in the UK can support them unless they go through the hoops of making a US PlayStation account. Then they probably cannot use the suits on there. So them even tweeting this out does not feel right. It's it's kind of weird.
The whole thing is stinky. That's really, really weird. I'm glad you caught this. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm all for raising more money for charity.
Yeah.
But when that's paired with basically tricking people into just giving you money and not the money to charity, it seems intentional, like you're trying to trick people into giving you money. Like, because nobody's going to buy this because it looks cool. They're only going to buy this because they're helping somebody in need. This, like, the sacrifice of downloading this outfit onto your console is in and of itself a charitable donation. So I don't think anybody would be buying this casually. So I think the only way that they could possibly make money on this is if they tricked you. And so I guess it makes sense at the end of the day. I
Yeah.
agree though. That's really, really slippery and slimy. That seems really, really weird.
Yeah,
I don't like
it's
that.
no, me neither. It really feels like, and Sony has been doing this often. Like it feels like they're just testing the water. Okay, what if we do a item pack like this, and let's see how many people buy it, and then maybe they can see in the US, or like the US is for charity, so they're not looking at those numbers, but in Europe, let's see how many people buy it. Um, Knowing, I mean, they probably don't know. Maybe the PlayStation Europe account has, if they have tweeted this as well, that would be crazy. But I don't know. It feels like they're just testing the water here, although they are very clear again that the outfits will be free and that they're not looking to sell sort of new suits and stuff. But yeah, why not give all the money to charity? I don't get it. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's got to be some sort of tax loophole or something they're
Maybe, yeah.
utilizing. Where like, oh, the donation's made directly to the charity, but you can only donate directly to a charity if you're within the same country as the charity.
But
Like
then finger out another charity in Europe, in the
that,
UK. Like
yeah,
they can probably
or just
think of
freaking
something.
do it where like again, for every one of these packs we sell, we'll donate $5. We'll donate the same value to the charity from our US office. We'll donate it to the US charity. Like there are
Yeah.
ways around it. It's not like it's impossible for them to figure it out. They're choosing not to, and it feels bad because they're choosing not to and they directly profit from the confusion, which is what makes me
Yeah.
feel really not good.
No, me neither. So yeah, I wanted to bring that up.
That's a good
And
catch.
it also feels interesting that it just I've covered like the first Spider-Man a lot as well. And I remember when updates and stuff would happen for that game. And I think it also was, of course, because they had the City That Never Sleeps DLC. But it felt like the game was like way more, there was way more eyes on the game. Right now we have this news, and usually I would like run to make a video on it because everything you would talk about regarding Spider-Man would be like huge. It's not the same anymore. It feels like people have moved on from this game and
Yeah.
are kind of like, eh.
At least in
I'm
my
not sure if people will
circles,
come back for this.
yeah, I don't think they do in mass or en masse. I from my perspective with my channels and community, there was a lot of kind of maybe disappointment's too strong of a word, but I think Spider-Man 2 was just underwhelming for a lot of people. It just was not as bombastic and crazy as they were hoping for. They were hoping it would be the God of War Ragnarok moment where it's like, oh, you thought we were done. No, we've got 15 other insane things to show you by the end of the game. Instead, it was like 17 hours, 15 to 17 hours, and it's over, and it has one of the most predictable stories in any game I've played recently. Like, it was ridiculous. It was crazy, and it
Yeah.
just didn't land quite right for people.
I'm not sure if you saw the most recent Donkey video, not the one where you were in,
Oh, yeah.
but the PlayStation one, where because that would also we discussed it I think last week as well about the PlayStation entering the latter stages of its life cycle. It was like I think the latter half was the right quote, but everyone was like using latter stages, which sounds like as if the new console is coming next year already, the PS6, but no, of course. And kind of the point of that video was that how this PS5 generation has just been like PS4 Part 2 and he just picked out every review from like a Sony exclusive talking about how it feels similar to the previous experience, talking about Miles Morales, Demon Souls remake, Spider-Man 2 of course as well. And yeah, I kind of were, and of course those games also launching on PS4, Naughty Dog only releasing remasters. So it's been a kind of weird generation in terms of Sony games, and it really seems that they're not taking a lot of risks, something that helped them in the PS4 generation, because then we got Horizon Zero Dawn, the God of War reboot, like a lot of new experiences. And right now we're in the, let's do those experiences again, but bigger.
Yeah.
While we talk about Elden Ring, we talk about Helldivers 2. Sure, it's 2, but it's still a new experience with a completely new camera style and just the way that they're doing everything right now with that game. Palworld, of course, earlier. People are just looking for completely new things. And it's like a huge bet. But it seems that, the big budgets, and that was also something from the Spider-Man or from the Insomniac leak. It was like, we spent 3 times the budget on Spider-Man 2 for Spider-Man 1. Do people even notice that? That was like one of the questions in one of the presentations. And I don't think people do. So is that then really worth it to go to spend that much money?
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. I think people are just starting to kind of burn out on the constant remakes, remasters, sequels. Like, they're just looking for something fresh. And we talked about it on stream today. It's really jarring when you look back at the PS4 gen and you see just how many new fresh things came out that now we consider to be like mainstays and staples of the gaming industry that at the start of the PS4 gen didn't exist. And now we really, in halfway through the PS5 generation, we really have not seen a lot of new, fresh things. Like, we've seen plenty of remakes, plenty of sequels, remasters, but very, very few big, crazy surprises. And even on PlayStation's side, the biggest games that they've had have been like God of War Ragnarok, a sequel, and then Spider-Man 2, a sequel.
Horizon Forbidden West,
a sequel. And it's like, by this time in the PS4 gen, I mean, we had like Bloodborne Until Dawn. We had I'm blanking on the 2014.
Resogun. That's also a launch game. Wait.
Like
The Order 1886.
The Order. Oh, I have the collector's edition of the Order.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This up here next to Melania. That is the collector's edition of the Order 1886.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That game gets too much hate. Well. It deserved the hate it got at the time. But I think it's actually a very interesting game in the history of gaming, because a lot of the devs that did that went on to work with Naughty Dog and Sony Santa Monica, and a lot of that talent was absorbed into those studios that made some of the biggest games of the PS4 generation, like God of War 2018, The Last of Us Part 2. So I think that game is a really interesting swing and a miss, but it laid the foundation for a lot of games that would come after, very cinematic games. So that's how I'm justifying owning a collector's edition for a
I went to like even a press event for that game, and I think I finished the game there. So that's awesome.
That's awesome. Didn't even need to play it at launch.
Pretty. And the first time I saw that, the Zeppelin mission, I was like, whoa, this is insane.
Yeah. It's like a new,
some cool thing.
New genre almost. And now we kind of take it for granted because so many of these games and studios do the narrative thing just so casually, and the cinematic thing so casually. But at the time, it really was very different.
Journey, another one, interesting, of course. An interesting type of experience.
Journey was everywhere for a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was, they also greenlit and published probably the greatest game of 2016, No Man's Sky. That one released great. So I guess they had that big old risk that kind of blew up in their faces. So yeah, I mean, all of this to say, it just feels like this generation's been super safe, lacking a lot of daring moves. Or rather, perhaps the only daring moves seem to have been to greenlight big budgets for live service games that they are seemingly acknowledging have a real high chance of just straight flopping. Because the methodology with live service games recently has been, okay, we'll make 12 of them, and if one is successful, it'll pay for the other 11. And so they're just willingly sacrificing all of this. But this was really interesting. We talked about this on stream on Monday. Sony, of course, had a big investor call, and one of the things that happened shortly after that was that they had $10 billion of value wiped off of their
Yeah.
market cap. And the reason for that was because it was multiple things, but in addition to PS5 sales forecasts being slashed from 25 million to 21 million, they also had a very scary revelation in the numbers. Specifically, let me see if I have the exact quote. Their margins have plummeted to almost decade lows, which, as these analysts are saying, is completely unacceptable. They said that they expected it by this time in the generation to be upwards of 20% for the margin of their overall revenue streams, all factored in together. But instead, it's been plummeting, and their margin last year was, it was more than 9% in December of 2022, and today it's down at 6%. And that's because when you factor in all the expenses, all the money wasted on projects like The Last of Us Online that never saw the light of day, that gets factored into the expense column, but there's no revenue coming in to balance it out because it was just straight canceled. So
I think they made like 20 billion and only had like 1 billion profit or something, right? Something
basically,
crazy like that. Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's just their expenses are super high, and the expenses are high because they've been working on a lot of projects that don't really go anywhere. It's the same exact complaint that investors have had with Ubisoft for about 5-6 years, which is that they've greenlit all of these projects that have gone nowhere, which drives margin down because they're just wasting money on projects that never go anywhere. Like spending tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars on their NFT program that goes nowhere.
And they had like Project X and Project Y and Project all these battle royale games. And do you know that Project Y is still a thing that is happening?
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's one of those that is still somehow being, or Project U. I can't keep up, but yeah, a session-based co-op shooter. Yeah, this is it. Project U is still being worked on, and
Jesus,
guess they don't learn.
Yeah, didn't
but
they?
I really think they don't know what to do with those developers. Otherwise, that's kind of the thing.
I mean, the complaint from a lot of investors has been that they are too big for what they do. Like, for the games that they put out, the revenue they bring in, they have probably 5,000 to 6,000 more employees than they should have.
They have the same amount of employees as Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft, and King combined.
Yeah, just take that in for a second.
And they make like 10 times the amount of revenue.
Yeah.
Like Ubisoft is at like, I think 1.5 billion. They really don't make a lot of money. Probably a bit more nowadays, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. We just take that in. Take it in.
Yeah.
It's real bad.
But they made $1.4 billion in the first 9 months of their current financial year. And that is with Avatar, Mirage.
Yeah. Oh, and now I don't know what accounting method they use, just in case people aren't aware. There are some ways that you can account for your business where, like, you do a cash method of accounting, or maybe you do it all where, like, okay, rewind, calm down, Luke. There are certain ways where you can account for stuff where, like, say I am working on a big project and I spend $1,000 of it this month, and I'm going to spend $1,000 next month and $1,000 the next month preparing this big project. And then all told, I spend $3,000 on the project, but that will only be at the end of the project when everything is done, right? Well, there are ways that you can do accounting, and it's different for international companies. So that's where it gets tricky, and I won't pretend to know which way they do it. But there are ways where, like, if the reporting quarter was this quarter, or this month rather, I would only have $1,000 on my books as an expense for this project. But I still have $2,000 more I'm going to be spending in the next 2 months, but those aren't on the books yet until they've occurred, because it's written on the books the moment it happens. Some companies, what they do is all of the expenses for the project get written onto the books when the project kind of happens, when that occurs. And so $3,000 gets slapped on the books all at once, effectively. And so there are ways that you kind of stagger projects so that they line up in certain quarters for certain reporting thresholds and stuff like that. My question is, did Ubisoft, do they have certain things like that happening for Skull and Bones and some of these other projects where they're going to have a god-awful quarter where all of these losses are basically accounted for all at once? Or have they been writing this off over the last
I think writing them off, yeah, probably over, yeah. That will be interesting, though. Maybe when it launches, that's when that happens, but I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just honestly not sure how they report these things or what the accounting standards are in France. So I don't know.
Yeah, and they got like money from the Singapore government, and there were also not like, for as far as I remember, and I listen to every investor call they do, like any big sort of steep money earnings they had recently from the government or something, which was of course another rumor why they had to put this out, because they were like, hey, you want our money? You have to launch a new IP, they said as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't rebrand this.
No,
it's like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Dude, can you imagine the hate they'd get if this was Assassin's Creed Skull and Bones?
Oh my god.
No. So bad.
They dodged the bullet with that. I'm happy that they didn't do it. But that's why I still felt the need to make my video, because I know that it's not a game that I would normally like. It's like an online game, but I still saw people when I was streaming it be like, oh, I pre-ordered it. And I was like, wait. And I was so surprised. A lot of people still did not know that there was almost no online gameplay. That really shows you that we're in this bubble, even though I thought it was like super clear that boarding was just a cutscene, but people still did not know.
Yeah, those clips still went viral, even though like that was established a year and a half ago. Like,
yeah, I thought that everyone knew this, but no.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay, we got some quick ones. Us talking about taking risks. Gearbox is making Borderlands 4. No surprise here. No, but I think it's interesting. Like Randy, of course, the Borderlands trailer. I'm not sure if you saw it. I saw some people talk about it here. It's like, it feels like an old school game movie to me. Like one made before we actually got cool game stuff like The Last of Us and Arcane. Did you had a chance to watch it?
I've not dared yet.
Okay.
Because it looks, I saw a still shot and I was like, I don't know if I have the strength. I think
the world, the sort of world building looks really cool. They really seem to nail some of the factions and sort of the environments, but it really feels like that Jumanji movie. Did you watch that with like The Rock and stuff? Where that was also based on like a sort of older movie, where they would like enter a sort of game, I think it was, or like a sort of box, and then go into this fantasy world and have to escape. It really feels like they're going for that sort of approach.
I mean,
like
it has Kevin Hart as well, right?
Yeah, Jumanji. Yeah, sorry, did I mispronounce it?
No, that's right. Both games have Kevin Hart in it, right?
Oh.
Or both movies.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So
it's like kind of the comic relief in a way, right?
Yeah.
And they have like Jack Black as like Claptrap, and they kind of changed his voice, so you know it's like Jack Black.
Yeah. They're like,
well, of course, normally Claptrap is like this, like very identical voice for every game, but now they changed it, so people are like, "Oh, that's him."
I appreciate. It's one of those things where it's like, that was a choice that makes sense.
Yeah,
I get why you did it. I'm not sure if I like it or not, but I get it. Like if I was spending millions getting Jack Black in my movie, I'd probably want people to know Jack Black was in the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've heard rumblings about this. I don't have a lot of faith in big budget video game adaptations into the movie space. Sometimes they surprise you. I think Mario was actually pretty good. Even though people gave Chris Pratt
Sonic movies tend to be good. I have not watched them, but I heard good things.
Yeah, they're pretty good. What's another video game movie? Harry Potter was really no, I think in general,
based
like
on the game that
based
came out
on the
10
video
years
game, that came out after like 20 years after the first movie.
Oh damn, really?
Yeah.
Okay, the first,
Yeah, so anyway, I'll probably
Yeah,
check it out. I'll probably watch it after this and give it a shot. Just see what
I
it's
don't
like.
know. I've now stayed away. Like there was like a Monster Hunter movie as well. It feels more
Oh, I
like
did
that.
see
It feels
that.
more. Oh, really? Yeah. It feels more like that. It feels more like this sort of. Maybe it would have been better if it was like an animated movie because of the style and these characters. And I kind of had like a different idea for some of the characters that we are now seeing in the movie, and I don't know. It could be again. I think Jumanji did very well, even though that was also kind of a yeah. They did it. Did you watch like the Dungeon and Dragons movie? It kind of has
Mhm.
that vibe, right? So it's like famous people pretending to be characters or something like in a fantasy world. Like,
It's
yeah,
one of those
I don't know.
movies like it's kind of like Mamma Mia, where it's like this movie is nonsense and it exists basically, let's just be real, just for rich people to go on vacation and then write it off as a business expense. Like that's all Mamma Mia was. Let's be honest. They all just wanted to go to Greece for 3 months and then say, oh yeah, we'll also film a movie while we're there. And I think that's the same thing with a lot of these where it's like, let's just go dress up in pantaloons and run around with
I
swords
don't
and film
think
it.
that people go cosplay as Borderlands characters for fun, but we will see. Go watch the trailer if you have the time.
If you're so
But
inclined.
I'm kind of yeah, I'm not so sure. But the news that I quickly wanted to touch on was that Randy Pitchford was like being interviewed about the movie, and basically said. Was asked like what was your favorite Borderlands game, and then he basically said that it was Borderlands 4, like basically the one that has not been announced yet. Clearly, we're working on something, and I know what we're working on, and holy shit, it's the greatest thing we've ever done. I hope it's not like a magic trick he's teasing here, but we will see. And I can't wait, but it's not time yet. It's not time yet. There will be time.
Yeah.
So normally they're at like PAX, and then they reveal it there, and like they are not at PAX this year. So it's kind of like I can see it go both ways. Either this year or next year, we still have the Take-Two wanting to make a ton of money, even without GTA. So I'm still gonna say that it's gonna happen 5 years after Borderlands 3. I don't think it would fit in 2025. It would be the perfect game for this year,
Yeah.
but
I don't know. I'm not. A lot of it just depends on what they're trying to do with it. Borderlands 3 was, if I recall correctly, it was like it was fine. Like I think it got good reviews. It was at like an 8 or like 8.5 out of
yeah.
10 for most people. But I recall it kind of disappearing relatively quickly. I don't know if another game came out around the same time that overshadowed it, because I think that was 2019.
Yeah, it was 2019. I covered it a lot. They actually did a great job with the post-launch. They added like every month a big free thing, but it was like very clear that only like the hardcore people obviously sticked around for that. But it was still pretty big. They did 4 DLCs, which kind of crazy, and they launched them all in a rapid pace as well. So, and I mean, Wonderlands also did very well. So I do think that if Borderlands had 3 had like a sort of bad taste, that yeah, people maybe would not be cleaning onto Wonderlands that much. But I do think they have to do a bit more, because Borderlands 3 really felt like Borderlands 2 with modern graphics and some learnings. But I'm curious if they have to we have to get away from the let's go into this zone with a loading screen. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of old school. I think they have to go for open. So every planet is like one big open zone. I think that would make more sense.
Yeah. And I think they can manage that pretty easy. Well,
Yeah,
not
you would
easy,
think
but I
so.
think they could manage that.
Yeah, because
Um,
it's like probably a next gen only game. So, and they're still running on Unreal Engine 4, according to a leak from like a developer on it. So
oh,
that's
really?
interesting.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
interesting. So a game we all know is probably happening, ladies and gentlemen. As for when, we don't know, but it's probably happening.
Yeah.
Respawn also.
Yeah.
This was kind of cool. We
Yeah.
actually had Tom Henderson in chat. He was like
Oh.
in our stream, right like minutes after he posted this article. He's
Oh,
like,
nice.
"Hey, have you checked out the article?" And I was like, "Not yet. Let me see." So Tom pops into our live streams every once in a while.
That's cool. That's cool.
And basically, the sources are saying that Respawn is developing a first-person Star Wars Mandalorian game. It's not super clear from these descriptions what exactly the game looks like. Like, it's very, very interesting. It's not like your standard linear game. They describe like a heavy focus on mobility and style. It basically ends up sounding a lot like Doom, at least to me, where it's all about like the player dashing, vertical jumping, boost sliding. It's very fast paced is how it's described, and it is built around rewarding players for playing in this style. For example, the player's health will mainly regenerate based on successive kills. So it's all about bouncing around arenas quickly, shooting and killing as many people as you can. So to me, when I read this whole article and the full description of it, it sounds like a game similar in structure, or at least style, to Doom in terms of play style. As for what exactly it leans into, if it's more narrative, if it's more linear, who knows? I don't think those details are even ironed out at this point. But at the very least, it's a cool project, and Respawn seems to know what they're doing, except when it comes to PC optimization. So I'll be keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I think this is very exciting news. I think it's like all kind of wild that it took them this long to make a Mandalorian game. And we of course now know there's a movie coming as well. Kind of sad that for me, the TV show kind of fell off. I thought the first season was amazing, and then I could not really care for the second one, and then the third one, it was too slow for me, so I didn't even finish it. But like I think the first season of Mandalorian already felt like a game. This was just a person doing side missions in a town, getting new weapons and armor upgrades, and then going on to the next mission. So I think that already sounds very, very cool. But we have to remember that Respawn, of course, Titanfall 2, they made that as well. And I listened to a podcast from Jeff Grubb, who also corroborated this rumor and basically said, I heard about this game as well, but what he basically talked about is that they had a lot of ideas for Titanfall 3, but that ended up getting cancelled. And it seems like those ideas are kind of making their way over to this game. And of course, Titanfall was also very mobility and like fast-paced, and you could wall run and stuff. But what they saw in that game was that not a lot of people were using it. So it seems that they are kind of trying to push people to play the game in like a cool, mobility focused way instead of the more Call of Duty way, and then incentivizing them to make successive kills. If that's the only way you can get health back, that's what we saw in Doom as well. You have to be on the move. You have to be killing people constantly. Of course, in Doom, the whole thing was that you're constantly switching weapons to the chainsaw. Oh, I need shield back. I'm going to switch to this. So I thought that was like really, really interesting, and seems like they're taking some things from that. We have a wrist rocket, the grapple hook, visor for tagging enemies and bounties. They do say that it's not an open world game, but it will have linear levels taking place on a variety of different planets in the Star Wars universe. And I think because it's a Star Wars game, it's still going to be very narrative focused. And when is that movie coming out? Because maybe they're aiming to launch it around that.
Oh,
that would be pretty. But this sounds great. 2026.
Ooh.
Or
next gen Xbox exclusive. Launch exclusive. You never know.
Yeah, the release date, Lucasfilm says they have 3 films booked. One for May 2026, December 2026, and December 2027. So Mandalorian is one of that. And I think 2026, I mean, remember that this game was kind of announced last year. At the start of last year, we learned, a Jedi Survivor was, of course, revealed at the Game Awards. And then they said, okay, we have 2 other Star Wars games in the work. One first-person shooter, which this one, and a strategy game with Bit Reactor, which like the studio behind, or with XCOM veterans. So they're basically seeming like making a Midnight Suns, but then for Star Wars. Did not work out for Marvel, so I'm curious if that will work out for this. But I mean, and also worth noting, they're still making Jedi 3. So Respawn once again kind of keeping EA afloat with other games apart from Sims and sports. So
Yeah, I really hope they learn their lesson from the negative response to Jedi Survivor's performance issues. Like, there were so
yeah,
many problems with that game at launch. Like, I understand some people didn't run into any, but for a lot of people the game was basically unplayable um
it,
on their hardware.
it's yeah, it's another game that I feel just did not make the same splash as Jedi Fallen Order, because Jedi Fallen Order also had a lot of issues, but you still heard breaking records. It was the second best-selling game in 2019 when it came out, which was huge. So them like not and for Jedi Fallen Survivor, we just didn't hear those numbers. So that kind of goes back to the conversation we were having, where it's just a sequel or something. Previously sequels were like safe bets and it would always grow, but I think we kind of moved away from that. People just want kind of new things.
Yeah, they want
So that's
something
what that's
fresh and
why.
exciting. And it's hard to be
Yeah.
excited for something that is being bashed online for being a broken
Oh yeah.
mess at launch.
Yeah.
Like,
Not again. You're
yeah.
maybe like, yeah.
And it was like, so this is a pattern for Respawn at this point, that these games are buggy and have troubled launches, and they seemingly don't care, and they expect you to still buy the game for $70 anyways. And that's a great way to piss off your player base, when they feel like you're just trying to take advantage of them and their wallets. It's the same thing with like Yves Guillemot, the CEO of Ubisoft, saying, no, you should buy Skull and Bones for $70 because it's a quadruple A game. It's like, no, you're not entitled to my money. Like, you're not entitled to me spending $70 on Jedi Survivor
I think
when it's broken.
the,
Like,
the quadruple A game was more talking to investors why it was, why they were asking money for it.
yeah, because
Uh,
it was an investor asked, or I think he worked with some firm, but he asked,
yeah,
why isn't it going free to play? Because that probably has
yeah,
a lot more potential for the seasonal content. And then Eve said, well, because it's a quadruple A game, we're
yeah.
delivering a premium experience or whatever, which ended up kind of blowing up in his face. But I mean, it
I
goes to
mean,
show you have to be so
yeah,
conscious when talking to investors now, because
yeah,
like video game fans will hear that. And now it's a meme. People are like,
yeah.
all over my
Oh,
videos are like, Luke, I get what you're saying. The game is bad, but have you considered that it's a quadruple A game? Like,
yeah. It's really like a running gag. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see that everywhere as well. Like, because then Asmongold or whoever like picks it up, and then everyone knows it's like that was, or like that boarding video also had like, I think double A or quadruple A in the title.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Taz, thank you for the super chat. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by this. You might have to rephrase it for me, and I'll read it. I will need let me solo her will return for Elden Ring DLC to give me a hand. I'm not sure.
I think they are in a random order, and we have to figure out.
Oh, we have to decipher it. It's part of the thing. I'm not really sure. I will say I'm very excited for the Elden Ring DLC. That's something potentially maybe we can
Yeah.
agree on, I think. And then the last thing, which I think we can all agree on, is that it was a, quote, truly awful idea to spend $125 million on Immortals of Aveum, says a former developer. They claim it was a bad move to make a AAA single-player shooter in today's market, especially one that was not that unique or that didn't really stand out very well. Like, I don't know, did you play this game?
I wanted to. I think at first when they revealed it, I was like, oh, this sounds like a cool idea, right? Like a Call of Duty campaign with like dragons and stuff. And I didn't really know what to expect. But then the most like typical main character, his name was also like your very typical, very stereotypical, and the gameplay just looked like a worse Doom. And yeah, many things went wrong with this game. They also delayed it, of course, to be just after Baldur's Gate 3, so kind of sandwiched between Baldur's Gate and Starfield. Not that it, I think, would have helped. Like, this was a $60 game that, yeah, never really got very great reviews, and that's kind of the sad part. You really if you're making a new IP like this. I mean, we're seeing it last week with Bennett, or 2 weeks ago with Bennett, or was it last week? Time flies. But with Bennett, I think it was last week. Like, that game, I don't think is doing very well, and that's because it's really good, but it's not like drop everything and play this right now. And it's kind of sad that because there's so much competition, and because people want, like, Super Earth needs help, people kind of pick and choose. Like, it's the biggest games that only get bigger and bigger, and yeah, it just feels like there's just not a lot of room for, sadly, the smaller titles anymore. But I think the Immortal story, it was just the why I wanted to talk quickly about it is that some people, that it seemed like the wrong learnings were taking from this, because basically this developer was also saying that it was just never going to make sense to make a single player first person shooter, like story campaign only, in this day and age. And I don't know if that's true. I still think, I mean, yeah, I still think it can work. I hope to think that it can work, but especially in a year like last year, when even if you would buy 10 games, there would be 10 way better games that you could buy. So it was just an unfortunate timing. But yeah, they laid off almost all of their team. It was like a pretty sad. I listened to a podcast as well from I think the creative director, and they had like their launch party, and yeah, it was supposed to be like a celebration. Like, they worked very hard on this game for 5 years, and then everyone at the party was like, "And how's the game doing? And how's the game doing?" And by that time, they already knew, oh, the game is bombing. It was like doing way worse than they expected. They expected way better, and that's kind of crazy. Like, I think everyone expected this game to not do very well, but somehow they had different metrics or whatever. And so then at the party, everyone was like, I don't think the game is doing well. And then a week later, everyone got laid off. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an unfortunate story, but
I think
yeah.
I agree. I think it's reductive to be like, oh, it failed because it was a shooter. And it's like, there were a lot of problems. I think the chief thing was that it came off as kind of generic. Another thing was that literally not a single member of the cast was likable. And so the writing also was a big problem. The protagonist had the charisma of a damp paper towel. The supporting cast, they had characters that they really were trying to make funny. This guy is one of the most annoying characters I can remember in a video game. Full stop. Like, he was the archetype Marvel, like, cinematic universe character who says something really funny and crazy while people are being murdered in front of him, and it just ruins the tone of the scene and destroys it. So you're kind of rooting for him to get crushed by a boulder or something, but it never happens. And they have like big emotional moments tied around him because they think that you care about him, when no, the player is rooting for him to get killed off because he's so annoying. So like, that was a big problem. There were other characters I think they thought were going to be viewed as badass, like kind of like Lady Dimitrescu, where everybody was like, hold me mama, you know, uppers. People were memeing on mommy Dimitrescu. And I think I think they thought that some of these characters would be viewed the same way, and it just didn't happen. And instead it just was flat and pretty uninteresting. The game looks good. It's an Unreal Engine 5 game, so of course it visually is impressive, but the art direction doesn't really separate it out. It doesn't feel truly unique. It also launched alongside Atlas Fallen and Forspoken in roughly like a year, and those were both games that were based around like magic cufflinks, or cuffs rather, and this game was all about that, which was kind of an interesting overlap, that these games had magic cuffs. I don't know why that was like the meta for a year, where every new IP was trying to do that, but
it didn't work for any of them.
It didn't work. There were levels that were cool, like the opening of the game, which is in this cool like city built on basically cliffs, and it's kind of like BioShock mixed with like the opening of Final Fantasy VII. It was really, really cool, but that section is like an hour of the game, and then the rest of the game is spent in these like corridors and caves and stuff. So like the coolest part of the game is an afterthought, and it's just waves and waves of enemies that get kind of old as time goes on. And I do think it was too ambitious. It could have really benefited from a tighter scope, a shorter runtime, and a lower price tag.
Yeah.
And I think they also just desperately needed to find a way to make this game feel unique, and they just were never really able to figure it out. Because I got shown this game in like early access preview events, and I gave them my feedback at the time that I just didn't think any of the characters were particularly interesting. And like I just was like, I don't really see people watching these trailers and being like, ooh, I want to see more of this. I thought parts of it looked like it had potential from what we saw at the time during preview events, but it just never came together. And instead it was just generic EA game number 5. And it apparently, like, we pulled up the SteamDB page. Let me ask you, what do you think the peak player count is on this?
1,200.
You think peak 1,200? Okay. I did not see this coming, but the peak, all-time peak from when the game launched, 751.
No one bought this, and they even had the Mr. Beast collab later on.
Yeah, like, and I gotta give them credit. They were trying to find ways to kind of stir up some support or interest.
Yeah,
but
you could like fight Mr. Beast, but it was just like an enemy that looked nothing. It had the name Mr. Beast or something like that.
Yeah, like I appreciate them trying whatever they could
Yeah,
do
it was
to
a
save
fun
jobs.
idea, but it was like,
But
put him in
man,
the game then.
it was just, this was a game where, of course, I don't revel in anybody's failure or anything. This represents a lot of people losing their jobs and dreams crashing and burning. But like, I'm guessing the Mr. Beast collab was sometime between the 11th of November and the 20th of November. Because on the 20th of November, it reached on all, after launch, it reached the highest player count after launch of 326 players. Like,
Oh. And that video has been viewed by, I think, 100 million people or something.
yeah. And they spent, I don't know how many millions to sponsor him to do that.
Yeah, a few million, yeah, probably.
But that's the thing, is it's just, there are some games where it doesn't matter how much you spend on branding or rather marketing. If people aren't interested, it just doesn't matter. They just are not interested. There's nothing you can do. Not even Mr. Beast can save you.
No.
You're pretty
That would be
screwed
crazy,
at that
though.
point.
If like if you just put it in the Mr. Beast video, it would always work. That would be like such a
It's the panacea. It's the magic potion of video game publishing. Well, our game is flopping. Let me get Jimmy on the phone.
Yeah.
That'll save us.
We always have a plan C.
Yeah. Jeez, man.
But yeah, that was everything that I put in the doc. I think we discussed a lot. Again, it was a long day with a lot of news.
Yeah, I think the only thing that is right for us to do is to finish out on another guess the number for Joe Raptor, because you're better at guessing numbers than me. What do you think the current in-game player count is for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League?
They had a new update today.
Oh, today's an update day?
Yeah.
So maybe it's even higher than you would expect.
No.
Not lower. That would be crazy if it was lower than you.
Should I go with the 1,200 again? Is that like, I think that feels kind of right or something?
Feels right? Feels right?
Yeah, that feels
okay,
right.
I respect it. I respect it. A little bit of optimism. It's at
really?
966.
No, oh my god.
Yeah. Ooh. It's that's real rough. That's real rough. On PlayStation 5, maybe, they've peaked 1,100. Maybe they're up at 1,200 if you count that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's.
I hate that argument. Yeah, but more people are playing on console. Like, there are like leaderboards though, so it does seem that we can kind of like, and there were like a few 100,000 people on there, so I still don't think it crossed the 1 million mark though. But
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, the VG
That's
Insights, Game Analytic, and those guys, or Gamealytic, Steam Spy, they're all estimating probably around 130 to 150,000
they
units on
really
PC.
probably lost 200 million on this game.
think
like
it's a lot.
easily.
Yeah, it's
Great.
it's I mean, it's one of those things you never want to see a game implode, but if a game is going to implode, I'd rather it be a game that represents a problem of modern executives in the gaming space, which is trying to encourage their studios to make live service games even when they probably should be focusing on things they're really good at.
Yeah.
And I guess just to close this out, we'll just mention this because it's gaming adjacent. This just dropped a few minutes ago, so I figured I'd mention it. NVIDIA's earnings were also published, and they are absolutely ridiculous. Full year revenue is up 126%, and quarterly revenue was up 265%. And they said that this is pretty much exactly tied or directly tied to the acceleration of AI computing and stuff like that. So quarter revenue, data center revenue is up 409% from a year ago. That doesn't happen for companies. I just want to be clear.
No.
We're talking about like, oh no, Sony's margins are shrinking down to 6% and stuff. NVIDIA's just printing money at this point. That's just what
And
they're doing.
they're seemingly doing like the Switch 2 as well, like have like their special chip for it. So that will help them obviously as well. Although it's probably like a small portion nowadays of what they're doing.
Yeah,
with
they're
all
like,
their,
oh right, we were doing that. Oh.
I think they passed like a huge company recently. Which was it? Was it Apple? Or not? No, it was not Apple, probably, right? Or
I mean, they are huge at this point.
Or Google.
Yeah, they overtake Alphabet.
Oh, beating Amazon. They beat Amazon and Alphabet as well. So Google.
Yeah, they're now the third most valuable U.S. company.
That's insane.
Man. They are now just behind Microsoft and Apple, which makes sense. I mean, their market cap. What's their market cap right now? Yeah, I don't need ads. Market cap is $1.667 trillion. And if we go back 5 years, look at this. Look at this. Oh, baby. They're doing okay. They're doing just fine.
Did you get stocks? Did you get stocks?
Yeah, did you buy the stocks? Please tell me. Please tell me about the stocks.
Oh my god, that graph looks insane.
Remember when everybody was like, "Oh no, Nvidia, their whole business is tied up in Bitcoin and mining, all sorts of Ethereum and Bitcoin and stuff." And now with the AI craze, that's like a distant memory.
Yeah.
Now they
because this is actually useful. This actually useful.
Yeah, this actually generates revenue for companies.
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody, thank you guys so much for hanging with us. This has been a wonderful time. You guys are fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you to everybody who, of course, super chatted, became members, that type of thing, subbed on Twitch. You guys are fantastic. Much love to every single one of you. Do you have any closing thoughts, Mr. Joe Raptor?
No. Yeah, we will have the Final Fantasy review. It's tomorrow, so that might be interesting. I hope to get a code for the game as well soon because it's a huge game and every day that passes by, so I'll be focused on that mostly for the coming days, and kind of excited about it. Although I did not, in particular, like the demo that much. It felt they added like all the climbing, and I was like, that doesn't feel great or something. But hey, I hope the full game is better. I think the open world at least looks cool with because they updated the demo today. So if you have it, you can play like a open world section.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I am tempted, but I also want to play some Pacific Drive, and I want to play and help spread democracy to those those communist bugs. So I might have to do that if I can get in the server. That's the other thing. That's a big question mark. But thank you, everybody, for hanging with us. You guys are all wonderful. Much love. We'll see you soon. Stay safe.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.